Sins fog and they clog the heart and the mind. So if we're constantly out doing sins, then it's gonna make memorizing and retaining what we already memorized very, very hard. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Throughout my journey of memorizing the Quran, I have forgotten much of what I once memorized. So, subhanAllah, I'm very embarrassed to even say it, but I have forgotten around like 10, maybe even 15 juz of the Quran from what I had memorized previously. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you guys some tips and 5 common mistakes that if you avoid them, inshallah, you will be able to avoid falling into this trap of forgetting a lot of the Quran that you memorize. So stay tuned, let's get right into the video. The first mistake that I want you guys to avoid, and then honestly, it's the most common mistake that everyone makes who falls into this trap, and that is not reviewing the Quran. Listen up, you have to review. And what I mean by review, muraji'ah, is you have to read from your memory. When you memorize something new, you have to take out time and make a schedule in which, in this time slot that you make for yourself, you read from your memory. You're not looking at a mushaf. Looking at your mushaf does not count as muraji'ah, not this type that I'm talking about. Because I know many people think that just because they're reading the Quran and they're reading over what they memorize, that's muraji'ah, and that's not going to help you to be able to retain it from your memory. You have to practice and train your mind after you memorize to be able to continue reciting. So for example, in Ramadan, when you see the Imams and they're reading from Baqarah all the way to Nas from their memory, these are people who have spent hours and days training themselves to be able to retain that Quran from their memory. And it happens no other way than sitting down without looking at a mushaf and reciting from your memory. So make a schedule, stick to it. It doesn't matter how little or how big the amount is, you have to stick to a schedule of reciting from your memory every single day. And obviously, the more you memorize, the more you have to retain. So I remember, for example, when I first memorized my first juz, when I memorized Juz Amma, it was very easy for me to recite that. I would walk everywhere and just recite it. You know, it was all the Quran that I knew. And then 2 juz, it was still easy. 3 juz, once I got to like 5 juz, it became very difficult to maintain a schedule, and I had to get more structured. Okay, so my second piece of advice and the second mistake that we all make, which influences us forgetting the Quran, is indulging in sins. Listen, sins will prevent you from memorizing and retaining the Quran that you memorize. I'm telling you this, try your very best to stay away from sins, to make tawbah, all of these things. The Quran is the highest form of knowledge in this dunya. We have to honor it. When Allah blesses you to be able to memorize the Quran, you have to honor it. Sins fog and they clog the heart and the mind. So if we're constantly out doing sins, then it's gonna make memorizing and retaining what we already memorized very, very hard for us. So try your best to stay away from sins, and bi'idhnillah, this will definitely help you, I promise. And Allah musta'an, may Allah forgive all of us and help all of us to stay away from sins and do those things which are pleasing to Him, because we're all sinners at the end of the day. You're not gonna avoid doing sins. And I'm just adding this for those of you who have waswas and the shaitan is whispering to you right now and saying, oh my God, I can't stay away from sin, so I'm probably not gonna be able to memorize the Quran and blah, 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 blah. No, never use your sins as an excuse to not get closer to Allah. That makes no sense. It makes no sense, okay? So that's for you overthinkers out there. Okay, y'all, so number 3, and this is more like a tip, a piece of advice, or something that you should do. And that is learn the meanings of the Quran. Many of us, like when we're memorizing, we just get caught up in just the wording and like repeating the Quran. You know, I'm not telling you to go and become a full-time Arabic student by any means. If you are able to do that, then you should do that. However, you can just read a translation. Start to learn a little bit of Arabic. Learn the basic words in the Quran, because the Quran is very repetitive. It's very consistent. So if you can start to make some type of connections between the words that you're uttering and you're reciting and their meanings, then bi'idhnillah, this will help you in retaining what you're memorizing, because now you have the understanding of what's going with it. Number 4, y'all, preoccupying yourself with just frivolous things that don't have any benefit. They might not necessarily be sinful, but they're just like, they're not conducive for you trying to become a hifz al-Quran. And the reason I say this is because, just like with sins, with things that are like just false idle speech, you know, whether that be like gossip or like TV shows or whatever, you want to really try to limit these things in your life, especially if they're things that's haram. There's things that's haram we shouldn't do anyway. So, you know, if you listen to music, if you're gossiping, backbiting, if you're around people that just waste time, you need to try your best to limit and cut these things out of your life when you want to memorize the Quran, because at the end of the day, Allahu A'lam, I believe that memory is limited. You know, everybody doesn't have an infinite, you know, amount of memory. So if you're steady dumping a whole bunch of nonsense into the vessel that can be used to memorize the Quran, then what are you doing? So yeah, just try your best to try to stay away from things that aren't really beneficial, and inshallah that will help you in being able to retain what you memorized. And last but not least, number 5, the 5th mistake that I want you guys to avoid is depending on yourself, depending on your own efforts. And what I mean by this is, many of us, we get caught up in our daily routine, and sometimes we can forget that at the end of the day, tawfiq only comes from Allah. Success only comes from Allah. This Quran is something that Allah described it in the Quran, saying that if He would have revealed this Quran on a mountaintop, you would have seen the mountain crumble out of humiliation and out of fear of Allah. I'm saying that to say that this Quran is heavy. It would not be possible for us to memorize it if Allah didn't make it so. The Quran is only easy for people to memorize because Allah made it easy to memorize, not because we're so great as human beings and we're just able to do whatever we can. No, we're very weak. Yes, you should work very hard and you should put much time and effort into it. However, you need to be making dua along with those efforts, while understanding that your efforts are not enough to be able to hold on to this Quran. And that the only thing that's going to allow you to hold on to this Quran is tawfiq from the one who revealed it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's it for my tips, guys. I hope that you benefit from them. I believe that if you stick to these and you avoid these 5 mistakes, that you will be in great shape. And I pray that Allah gives all of you guys the tawfiq and the success in your journeys with learning His book. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Inshallah, I'll see you guys on the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.